Marcus Lattimore now a Washington Commander. The Pittsburgh Steelers made multiple moves. We're breaking down all of the trade deadline action and making a couple picks for Week 10 on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Appreciate all the everydayers out there that join us 5 days a week talking about the NFL, and welcome to all the new listeners as well. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast. Today's episode of P&W brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, a flurry of action around the NFL. Usually we do our six-pack of picks on this Wednesday show, but with all the trade activity, we're going to take that down to two picks. We're going to pick the Thursday nighter, we're going to pick the early morning Munich game, and then we'll save it all for Friday when we make the rest of our picks for Week 10, Matt, because there's plenty of trade action. Even though we covered a lot of moves yesterday, there were many more moves to come after. And I think I have a couple of winners from the NFL trade deadline. But let's start with the biggest move that happened after we recorded. And there were hints that maybe the Kansas City Chiefs and Washington Commanders were in on a Marcus Lattimore trade. And that trade did happen. And it was the Washington Commanders, Matt, that added a corner to a defense that needed a little bit of help if they were going to be a primetime player. As good as the Washington Commanders have looked, I think they even surprised themselves where they ended up this season and looked in the mirror and said, oh, we're ahead of schedule. Let's go win this thing. Let's go win some playoff games. And so they added themselves a cornerback to really help them do such a thing and accomplish that feat as they go through the rest of the season.
So I am very deep into Commander scouting reports because the Steelers go there this week. So I've been digging in heavy on this team. And there's some really interesting things about them. And I'm very impressed with the coaching staff, the quarterback, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I think they've outkicked their coverage on defense. And I even dug this up. I mean, just looking at their defense, even with Jonathan Allen out, I think their D tackles, their linebackers, Wagner and Luvu, and their safeties are the strength of the defense, even though the run defense isn't very good. But the outside is not great. And Forbes has been basically a bust in the first round. So I dug this up. I mean, last year, it probably won't surprise anyone that they gave up the most passing yards per game. And then during the first three games, they were the second worst in the league. Since then, they've been the best in yards per game through the air. So since week 4, they've been the best team in terms of allowing passing yardage. Part of it's because people run on them a lot, but now you're trying to even take that a step further and get a corner that can travel. You know, like, you think he follows George Pickens this weekend already? I mean, it's a day 2 pick. This is not just a rental. I love it for Washington, and for New Orleans, it's just unfortunately where you are and you have to make the move. And I think this is a win for them too. Any day 2 pick they can get, take it.
The complete deal is the Washington Commanders send a 2025 third-round pick, a 2025 fourth-round pick, and a 2025 sixth-round pick. And they have an extra third-round pick, which allowed them to do this as well. I think from Miami Dolphins, maybe. But they have an extra third-round pick.
That they obtained, one of the defensive end trades, Chase Young or Sweat? Or
the Chase Young pick was last draft. Yeah. So I think it was from a trade down. They traded down early in the second round, didn't they? In the draft,
right?
I think maybe. But anyways, they had an extra pick to play with too. And so this is, as trade deadline deals go, and this tells you that there was some bidding and other teams were involved. That's a lot to give up in a trade deadline deal. A third round pick, a fourth round pick, and a sixth round pick. They also get a fifth round pick back with Marshawn Lattimore. All those picks in the 2025 draft from the New Orleans Saints. I want to talk about the Saints in a second as well, but. Yeah, and by the way, the Commanders got kind of another boost to their defense with the way they're, speaking of second round picks, their rookie second round pick, Johnny Newton, has kind of overcome his injuries. And, he didn't start the season healthy. He had foot surgery in the offseason, which is probably one of the reasons he fell to them in the second round. It wasn't a first round pick in the first place. And he was, I think, the second highest graded rookie in the entire league the last couple of weeks. So he's actually been another mid-season addition, I think, for that defense, especially after Jonathan Allen had, I think it was a torn pec and is on IR. So that's helped them out quite a bit. So the defense is actually playing up a little bit more than maybe what it looked like early to start the season.
No doubt. Newton had no business going in the second round just based off of tape. I mean, I know there was people involved there. They didn't need him, but they took him anyway, and they should be really happy about it. So, no, this team's rounding into form, and you see what the plan is, and they've absolutely outkicked their coverage in terms of expectations. I think they were at a 6.5 over under Vegas win total, and they have 7 already,
Yeah, they already have 7. And Marcus Lattimore, obviously, he's a good player. Injuries have kind of dogged him as well, so you hope he stays healthy for the Commanders to compete a little bit more here in the second half of the season and continue doing what they're already doing, laying some serious groundwork, are the Commanders, and ahead of schedule. Pretty phenomenal what they're doing right now. And the Saints obviously going in the opposite direction. They don't even save that much money. There's tons of dead cap everywhere on this team, but it's a clear sign that finally they're going to start hitting that reset button, and it's probably going to be a long reset. It's a long overdue reset, and it's going to be next year for sure, and probably into 2026 before this is all kind of figured out and all that dead money is cleared. And this is a long, hard reset for the New Orleans Saints, and this is kind of the beginnings of it. And it should happen probably a long time ago.
Yeah, it probably should happen a long time ago, and it's going to be brutal couple seasons. I mean, I bet the off season's just dumping guys left and right too.
The Pittsburgh Steelers, the long national nightmare is over. They traded for a wide receiver, Matt. I can't believe they finally got it done. Actually, the Steelers made a couple of moves. You said something to me off the air, which is really interesting. I actually want to hold off on the wide receiver part of it. Let's talk about the other trade they made, and then we'll get into the wide receiver part of things for the Pittsburgh Steelers here. And I didn't see the Steelers because they kept a strength with the trade of Preston Smith from the Green Bay Packers, and that's a move that I think surprised a lot of people. I definitely didn't see that coming, but Preston Smith goes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they send a 7th round pick to the Green Bay Packers. Talk to me about that deal first before we talk about wide receiver and Mike Williams and how that fits.
Didn't see that coming at all. I mean, Herbig is an excellent number 3, and I think he's due back this week, but I immediately thought maybe he's a little slower to return than we thought. Watt and Highsmith have been playing too many snaps. They're like at 90% snap count. That's too hard on those guys, and they're thinking big picture here. I think a lot of it is, like you said, just keep a strength of strength, and we're going to go 4 deep with these guys, maybe even mix in some looks with 3 of them on the field together. But I'm not a reporter. I'm not scooping things. But a couple little birdies told me that the Baltimore birdies might have been interested in Preston Smith. So maybe the Steelers are playing a little defense.
Interesting. Yeah, and that can get a team involved. And look, it wasn't a big return either, a 7th round pick. No. Maybe the Ravens were offering a pick swap, and the Steelers said, we'll keep him away from you guys and drop a 7th round pick to bring Preston Smith over here. And Preston Smith is very different than Herbig, and he's a bigger end, and who knows, maybe
twitchy.
Could he play some like 5 technique? Is this more about, okay, not only do we keep him away from the Baltimore Ravens, but they've got Derrick Henry. We have to stop the run. We want a bigger edge presence as well to help us set the edge in some of these games.
I absolutely think that's true because he's not their type of edge. I mean, they're all about twitchy, get off guys. And he has played like 50-some snaps on the inside. I mean, I'm sure those are all 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12. But you line him up next to Cam Hayward and Highsmith and Watt coming off the edge on 3rd and long. There's might be something there.
All right, more on the NFL trade deadline next, including the Pittsburgh Steelers adding a wide receiver, how he fits with Russell Wilson and George Pickens in that offense, and more deadline moves. And I've got a couple teams that I really think were winners at the trade deadline. And we'll make a couple picks for Week 10 as well next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson brought to you by Ultimate Pro Football GM. Do you remember Ultimate Pro Football GM from last year? And maybe you want more trades in your life and the trade deadline's over. So go make your own trades. And no matter what team you are a fan of, Pro Football GM is back and have added amazing new game modes that we need to tell you about here. The game that has you step into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory, make all the trades you want for your team, and now has head coach career mode as well. So on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents, making trades, hiring coaching staffs, you can play as that coaching staff and call offensive plays during games as well. And tons of new tools to help you work through individual training camps, upgraded negotiation systems as GM. So fun and realistic game just got a lot better. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Play on the go, as you want to, when you want to, where you want to. And here's a special offer for our Locked On listeners. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your franchise. Make sure to get it, as this perk will help you jumpstart your play and give you the advantage you'll want in creating a dynasty. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com. That's ultimate-gm.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Pro Football GM. Start your dynasty today. The next segment of Peacock and Williamson, sponsored by Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So get in on this Week 10 action, and Prize Picks is the best way to get in on that action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Sign up today, get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to create and receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday, where each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value to your lineups. All you do is you pick 2 or more players and you pick more or less than on those stat projections at Prize Picks. For example, Jamar Chase, more than 79.5 receiving yards, and you hit on a couple of those and you win, and the more you stack, the more you win. So download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game. All right. The other move the Pittsburgh Steelers made was adding a wide receiver. And we've talked a lot about this, and it finally got done, and it was a last-minute deal, and it was a guy that probably they could have had, I think, long before this, which tells me they were probably kicking a lot of other tires, but it ended up being Mike Williams, who goes from the New York Jets now to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's a player we've talked about to the Steelers. How do you like the fit of Mike Williams, and how is it going to work? Because he's kind of a very similar player in that sort of X type of role that the George Pickens plays. So how does that work? And then how does the lineup file in with those guys in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense and Russell Wilson?
I think a 5's a little rich. You know, I thought you could get him for a 7, but apparently not. You know, I thought that was a little rich.
Which is probably why he wasn't already a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Maybe, right. But I think you're right too. Maybe they were looking for bigger fish. You know, like Schefter reported they had a deal done for Christian Kirk, and then he got hurt that day. You know, like there's a couple of those weird things that happened too. So they've had their eye on him for a while. I was at their facility in the midst of free agency. I don't know what I was doing down there, but I was just chatting with one of my buddies just with the team. He's like, "Oh, I got to go pick up Mike Williams at the airport tomorrow." Well, he was in New York and never left New York, never got to Pittsburgh. So they were heavily pursuing him then. And he's an I think he's a Russell Wilson friendly guy to me. Yep. You know, I mean, he's a downfield, go up and get it. I haven't watched every snap with the Jets, but what I've seen, especially his TV copy stuff, has not been impressive at all. He looks like he's lumbering and coming off an injury. But, man, his high spots with the Chargers are pretty high. I mean, he only played 3 games in 2023, but they were really good. Now, I don't know what version you're getting, you know?
I like the fit with Russell Wilson, maybe too similar in how he plays to George Pickens, like who's the route runner, who's the chain mover of that group. I think George Pickens could potentially move into that role and then have Williams be the secondary contested catch guy, but they're kind of similar. And then you got the jitterbug number 3, I assume that is where Austin kind of
Austin and Jefferson are now 3s, which they should be, or /4s, you know what I mean? Yeah.
But so if he walks into the starting lineup, then Mike Williams does.
I think sooner than later, unless he's lumbering to the point where he's useless. I mean, I don't know exactly what they're getting, but I think that's the plan, is line up him and Pickens. And I also don't think it's an accident. You mentioned the size of Preston Smith. They went out and got two very large people for their position.
Yeah. You need not apply unless you're 6'5", right?
Yeah, you got to be this tall to ride because we got the Ravens coming up, and right, exactly.
Moonballs will continue from Russell Wilson. So, run the ball, little play action, throw it over the top. That's the Steelers.
It's pretty simple. Yeah.
Some more moves. I want to run through some moves. You can stop me if you want. We can talk about them after. I just want to run through some of these because there were some minor moves. Tre'Davious White is clearly not that. I saw a report. Oh, star cornerback gets traded to the Baltimore Ravens. Tre'Davious White, former first-round pick. Injuries have really ravaged his career. He's definitely not the same player. And the Los Angeles Rams, they need better players in the secondary, and they're still trading away Tre'Davious White, which tells you what they think of him. The Baltimore Ravens, though, need some help and some depth. So they trade a 20. This is about as little as you can trade for a player, by the way. A 2026 7th-round pick from the Baltimore Ravens to the Los Angeles Rams. And the Rams send Tre'Davious White and a 2027 7th-round pick. This is 2 and 3 years away, by the way. This is 2025 and 2026 picks. So this is not this upcoming draft, but the one after. Baltimore sends a 7th-rounder, and then 3 years from now, 2027 draft, the Rams send a 7th-rounder back to the Baltimore Ravens with Tre'Davious White. So clearly, he was not hotly. It wasn't a hotly contested player that
around the league, beating down the doors for him, right?
Right, and I don't know what he's going to provide. His PFF coverage grades haven't been good, but a depth piece anyways. And I just kind of wanted to highlight, how far the star has fallen for Tre'Davious White, because he was a really good player early in his career and obviously a former first-round pick. Niners had some depth on the D-line. Khalil Davis from the Houston Texans for a 2026 7th-round pick. Also very little to give up there for a depth piece. There was the Jonathan Mingo trade, Dallas Cowboys, 4th-round pick. Mingo and a 7th-round pick come back. We talked a lot about that trade yesterday, so you can go back to that one. Khalil Herbert goes to the Cincinnati Bengals. Zadarius Smith to Detroit Lions, a 5th and a 6th for Zadarius Smith and a 7th. The Baron Browning deal to the Arizona Cardinals, kind of like the Washington Commanders. They're a team that needed help on defense or maybe ahead of schedule, and so they wanted to strengthen their case for making a playoff run. And then pre-deadline, there was the Cam Robinson to Vikings trade. There was obviously the Deontay Johnson to the Ravens trade, Uche to Kansas City, Hopkins to Kansas City, Amari Cooper to Buffalo, Devontae Adams to the New York Jets, and that sort of really kicked off things in the trade deadline period. And of all those teams, the big winners, and I will say, seeing Devontae Adams and DeAndre Hopkins in their second games with their new teams was very different, and you really started to see, okay, maybe this player does make a big difference. And to me, the Kansas City Chiefs getting DeAndre Hopkins, and maybe it was because we saw it primetime on Monday Night Football, but that one seems like one that I think the Chiefs are a big winner. So I have to crown the Chiefs as a big winner to be able to get a player that could be that much of a difference maker to help one of the weaknesses on their football team, and to really help, it's basically the wide receiver version of what they already have in Travis Kelce, which is kind of what they needed.
100% agree. I think that's the move we'll remember at the deadline. You know what I mean? Like, they won a third Super Bowl and had DeAndre Hopkins. I forget he was at the Chiefs. Oh my God. I don't have much to add. We did talk about a lot of those. The Tre'Davious White thing's interesting to me. Like, I wonder if negotiations came down to, you pay for the plane ticket though. Like, I mean, like they couldn't even that's the smallest compensation on the planet. That's like buying a candy bar for a penny. And one thing people don't think about, that I'm not picking on White, and I'm sure that's a weird feeling being that player that gets traded for the smallest amount you humanly can. But if you're not a starter, you have to be a special teamer if you're a corner. And these guys that are former stars, former first-round picks, if you're third and fourth corner, you got to be a gunner. You got to be, and he doesn't do that,
Yeah, that's true. I do want to highlight two moves that kind of had to be done, and I would give them, whatever A grades for the Minnesota Vikings adding Cam Robinson, and he looked really good in his first action because they had to replace a really good player in Christian Darrisaw at left tackle due to a season-ending injury. And so I thought that was a phenomenal move. They got the best player they possibly could, and it's hard, Matt, to add an offensive tackle. We saw these wide receivers get traded, even defensive linemen and depth pieces, but offensive linemen have to stay on the field. And You have to be able to pass protect. You have to be able to run block. And it's hard to find a starting caliber offensive tackle, left tackle at that. And the Vikings were able to find that in Cam Robinson. They sent a 5th-round pick in 2026 that can become a 4th based on playing time. And they ended up getting Cam Robinson in a conditional 2026 7th-round draft pick back. So I thought that was a phenomenal move by the Vikings, and early return was good there. And then basically the same token, Zadarius Smith, a 5th-round and a 6th-round pick going to Cleveland, and the Browns send Zadarius Smith and a 7th-round pick back to the Detroit Lions. And, they lost Aiden Hutchinson, their best player on the defensive side of the ball. They really needed to add somebody, and they found somebody in Zadarius Smith who can really, he's not Aiden Hutchinson at this point in his career, but he's a good player, and he's good against the run. He can give you some pass rush, and it was just so important that those teams got those players at really key positions, and they didn't have to give up too much and got difference-making players, I think. So, I loved those moves, shrewd moves by those GMs where you wish you didn't have to make those types of moves because of injury, but they had to, and they found really good replacements. It did as good as they could have, I think, in those scenarios.
Yeah, you lose Hutchinson and Darisaw. These are Pro Bowlers. These are top guys, and at least you found a Band-Aid. It's not a gaping wound anymore. So great, and it didn't cost you all that much. This leads us to tomorrow's game, but I'm also interested to see how the second half of the season Deontay Johnson and the Ravens, coexist.
Do you think teams like, say, the New York Giants, who were like maybe asking for too much for some guys, didn't trade anybody away? Was there anybody who was like a loser to you at the trade deadline? That's my way of saying the New York Giants are losers for not trading more. That's another team that come. I think maybe the Raiders could have done more and traded some more pieces potentially.
That's where I was going with it too. Was Raiders, Panthers, Browns, Saints are the teams I keep harping on this week that I don't want to be their GMs. Like, they have no hope. So couldn't you have got more day 3 picks? I don't know. It's easy to say. It does take 2 to tango. It's always easy to be like, well, just trade up in round 1, or nobody wants to trade back. Nobody wants your junk.
It's a perfect tease for tomorrow's mailbag because we have a question about which team Matt Williamson would want to GM for from those 2-win teams in the NFL. The have-nots currently in the NFL. So get your questions in for tomorrow's Peacock and Williamson mailbag, and we'll cover a whole lot going on in the NFL. But next, Matt, let's make picks, at least a couple of picks here. We're going to have a 2-pack of picks for Week 10, Thursday nighter, Munich game next. The final segment and our 2-pack of picks today brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And get ready to tackle the NFL action on FanDuel, who, by the way, every time we reference a line, including in our 2-pack this week, it comes from the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, Sunday, you're watching football, you want to check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. You can find it all on the very same app and the very same website at FanDuel.com, where you place your bet and maybe get informed about some other bets you want to make. Live in-game betting, NFL, college football, NBA, NHL, all of it you can find at FanDuel, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports book partner of the NFL. All right, Matt. Let's get into our 2-pack, as it is going to be this week, of picks for Week 10 of the NFL season. And there's one really good game and one really bad game. Up here, speaking of 2-win teams. But let's start with the Thursday nighter. It is the Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens, and it is the Baltimore Ravens that are both teams active at the deadline, by the way, gearing up for the second half of the year. It is the 4-5 Bengals at the 6-3 Ravens. Ravens favored by 6 points at home Thursday night.
Yeah, the entire AFC North made a trade of some sort. 3 of them acquired and Browns dumped. So lots happening in this neck of the woods. I'm really looking forward to this game. I really wish it wasn't Thursday. I'm looking at a 53 over-under and still leaning towards the over, because I just think there aren't 4 quarterbacks on the planet playing better than these 2 guys. The Burrow season has gone a little underreported, but he has put that team 100% on his back, especially lately, and has been absolutely phenomenal. And the Ravens' pass defense is their weakness. I mean, their run defense is awesome. Their offense is unbelievable. But their pass defense, to me, is very troubling. And since he barely even runs the ball, it's a game I think the Bengals need to win. And if they do, they're right back in the hunt for one of those 7 spots in the AFC. But if they lose it, it could be maybe the beginning of the end. That's why I wish it wasn't on Thursday night. But I think Burrow has a big day and barely even bothers try running the ball. And I think everybody on the Ravens offense feasts. I mean, I think this is going to be a really fun game, which probably means it'll be a 13-12 AFC North field goal fest. You know what I mean? Yeah. But I think it's like 40-42. I mean, I'm exaggerating, but I think it's going to be bombs away. Who guards Chase? Who stops Henry? Bengals defense is really bad. I'll take the 6 points though, just because it's such a must-have rivalry game. I'll take the points.
A Thursday night shootout. That would be a lot of fun.
It would be fun, huh?
I think is
2 awesome quarterbacks
right now. Burrow, even without Higgins, threw for 5 touchdown passes last week. So, it looks like it could gear up to be one of those shootout type of games here. But hold on a second. The Bengals aren't going to run the ball. They just traded for a backup running back. What are you talking about? This team's ready to go ground and pound. They did not address the defensive side of the ball at the trade deadline, which is, their bigger need. And I don't dislike the Khalil Herbert addition for the Bengals, but they still didn't address the thing that really ails the team the most, and that's on the defensive side of the ball, which is why I think the Baltimore Ravens will be able to score points. The Ravens are a strange team because they've lost games to the Browns and the Raiders.
Yeah,
losses.
Strange.
So you can't just bank on them beating everybody every week, even though I think they're one of the top 3. At least top 5 best teams in the NFL. And I think they are a better and more complete team right now than Cincinnati Bengals.
2 bad losses, though. It's weird.
And so my intuition tells me to take the points as well, but I'm going to go the other way just because we've been so bad on Thursday. One of us has to get this right. So I'm going to take the Ravens to win by a touchdown over the Bengals at home, short week. And I think the Ravens are a better football team. And I think in the end, they'll be able to impose their will on the Cincinnati Bengals. So give me Baltimore. I'm going to give up the 6 points because we've agreed a lot on these Thursday nighters, and we've been so wrong. One of us has to get this one right. So give me the Baltimore Ravens.
It will be nice to report back on Friday and be like, one of us actually picked this game right.
Yeah,
it'll probably be a 6-point game and it'll tie,
I think it also just goes to show you how chaotic the league is, and especially on a short week Thursday night, It's just hard to even know what you can bank on with teams on Thursday nights too, which is why I would probably, lean towards the points. And that was kind of my intuition, which is why my intuition's been wrong every week. So I'm going to go chaos.
It stands it, yeah.
Right. And, Baltimore Ravens really have an opportunity to really do a number on the Bengals too, because the Bengals season is like every week it's kind of just on the brink because they can't let any more losses stack up with how competitive this thing is in the not only the North, but the entire AFC. If you want to make a
they have bad tiebreakers too. They have a bunch of conference losses, and they can't afford to start dropping division games.
Germany have.
What Germany ever do to us?
I mean,
kidding.
Well, hey, look, a long time ago, okay. But since in the last 80 years, they've imported a lot of great beer. And they're phenomenal football fans over there. It's always electric. And what do? We export Giants and Panthers to them in week 10. So apologies to those in Munich. I'm sure they'll be out there singing and having a good time watching American football in Munich. It is the New York Giants at the Carolina Panthers, and it is the New York Giants that are favored by 6 points in Munich in this one, Matt. I don't think the Giants should be favored by 6 points over anybody, including maybe Carolina Panthers, who I still would consider the worst team in the NFL. This might be the 2 worst teams in the NFL.
Coming off a big win, though, those Panthers. I mean, you lose to them, you get fired. That's what happens. I mean, that's how bad you are. I mean, you lose a Panther.
Is this what we're going to see? The Panthers going to go on a run and just every head coach gets fired?
Just knocking guys out left and right. Yeah. You teased it about the mailbag. The Giants of the 2 win teams might be my pick for I want to be their GM. I mean, I have to give that some thought because I know their quarterback's a problem, but I think they have pieces. They have a pass rush. We didn't see it against Washington. I think both sides of the ball have stuff at least that I could build around, especially with like Andrew Thomas coming back. I can't pick the Panthers. I mean, I know 6 is a lot for the Giants, but who guards Neighbors? And Tracy's turning into a weapon, and Wan'Dale Robinson could have 10 catches, and Slayton's been okay, and Daniel Jones is better than Bryce Young. Yeah, I mean, I do have some hope, well, some excitement about this young Panthers offense. You know, if they just go Jatavian Sanders, Bryce Young, Jonathan Brooks, Leggett, Coker, mix in some Chuba, and just be unbelievably young and maybe show progress, that could be a fun second half of the season if you really want to be optimistic. But I'm not optimistic at all about the Panthers.
12-9 Giants, and Carolina covers with the points. I'm taking the points in the Carolina Panthers and what I think is going to be an ugly game. And you laid it out there. Jonathan Brooks, I'm excited. I think he's going to be out there and get his first NFL action. And he doesn't have to carry the load or anything like that, but I want to see if he looks like that dynamic player we saw in college in his first game back in the NFL. A little something to build on. They won last week, maybe a little confidence. You saw Bryce Young make a couple throws over the middle of the field and some, at least some things to build on for them. And I just don't think the Giants are the team to come in and just, win by multiple scores necessarily. I like the points with 2 bad teams in an ugly game. I think it'll be close and somewhat low scoring. And so I'll take the points in the Carolina.
I know the Panthers O-line isn't horrible, but I keep picturing Dexter Lawrence just smashing Bryce Young like a father could to his 5-year-old son, And,
on the other side of this, by the way, I would never put my real money on this game because you have to pick one. And we run into that a lot on this show, Matt. And I think, some of our picks, we would like our picks to be better in total. I'm barely over 500 for the season. I think 52%. Shout out to the listeners that are keeping track for us. But half of those games I would never actually pick, but you kind of have to pick because that's what we do here. And so the games we like, I think we have a much better record. And I know you've talked about that. You're on the plus side of the money.
I'm up for the year, yeah.
Care about, right? And this is one of those I would not put my money on. But one thing that does bode well for the Giants and doesn't bode well for the Panthers in that win, and I don't have it up anymore, but the Saints, when they lost to the Panthers, it was like the first time in NFL history that a team had like 150 rushing yards, won the time of possession, won I
forget what they all
battle. And it was like, you can't do all this and still lose a game. So it's not like the Panthers really beat them in that many categories. It was kind of a wild game and ended up getting their head coach fired. So it's not like the Panthers were like, oh man, we lit the thing on fire. There's still a lot of work to do there.
Oh yeah, a lot.
And they're still the worst team in the league. But can the Giants beat them by a touchdown or more? I'm gonna go the other way and say it's a close, ugly game in Munich.
I like we're splitting on both these.
Yeah. Again, apologies to those German football fans that this is the game we sent them, and we knew this wasn't a good game prior to the
schedule came out
to export to Munich. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. We're going to make the rest of our picks for Week 10 on Friday. Tomorrow, come back for our mailbag. Find out which bad team Matt Williamson would most like to turn around in the NFL. Talk to you then right here, Peacock and Williamson.